Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's talk, Fast Tracking Digital Delivery During a Pandemic, part of Digital Leaders Insight Live Week. So my name is Stacey Harris. I will be facilitating the session today. Now we have DVLA's Kerry Dirk and Julie Risley, who will be speaking about their experience of delivering 2 brand new digital services during the first peak of the pandemic. So with DVLA's digital teams responding rapidly to keep drivers and businesses moving. If you have any questions throughout the session, pop them into the Q&A at the side and we'll have dedicated time at the end to get them answered. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Kerry and Julie.
Good afternoon, welcome. I hope everyone's safe and well in these crazy times. My name is Kerry Dirk. I'm the Technical Product Manager for DVLA's Vehicle Services. So that accounts for services like first registration, enforcement services, anything to do with managing your vehicle, licensing your vehicle, and also trailer registration. So I've got around 15 years experience, public sector experience. The main bulk of that has been in the delivery space. So now I'll hand over to Julie.
Afternoon all, my name is Julie Risley. I'm the vehicle registration, post-registration service designer for the DVLA. I'm accountable for the products and services after first registration and up to and including end of life of the vehicle. I respond to the core DVLA activities around road safety, the collection of VED and creating an accurate database of vehicle records. So far have 5 online services, of which the last 2, which will be discussed today, were delivered last summer during the pandemic.
Okay, so today we're going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of what we've done during the pandemic. We'll give a bit of background to DVLA. We'll give you a bit of background around the situation we were in summer last year, and then we'll talk to you about the 2 services that we've delivered. One of them being change the address on your V5C, otherwise known as your logbook. The other one then is the request a duplicate V5C service. So this is where you might have lost your logbook and you want to replace that. Then we'll give you a demonstration. So we'll show you one of the services that we've developed. We'll talk around some lessons learned, some continuous improvements that we've got moving forward, and then we'll open the floor up to questions. So just a little bit about DVLA. Every year we issue more than 10 million driving licenses. We issue nearly 13 million vehicle registration certificates. Last year alone, we've had over 195 million customer transactions, and the main bulk of that is through our online channels that we have, our digital services. We answer more than 18 million phone calls every year, and we respond to over 600,000 emails and web chats, just to talk about the sheer scale of the organisation that is DVLA. A few more stats then. We've got 49 million driver records on our database. We've got over 40 million vehicle records. We take in over 6 billion in revenue. That is mainly VED revenue, so your vehicle tax. We have 81 digital services that are live and active. We've currently got 52 live projects in flow, which again just illustrates the sheer size of the organisation. And last year, from a technology perspective, we had nearly 76,000 code commits. So that just shows you from a digital organisation point of view, the amount of coding that we actually do. I think Julie's going to run through where we were last summer.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you may already be aware, we had a lockdown announcement on the 18th of March 2020 for COVID-19. And at that date, the majority of our staff were sent home. and a lot of us stayed at home. The non-operational staff, the majority of them are still working from home, and obviously this had a significant impact on the reduction of operational resource that we had on site. As a result of all of that, we had a significant spike in our paper backlog, up to 1.5 million at one point, and because obviously this was pre-COVID recovery planning, when we didn't quite know which direction we were taking or what we needed to take in relation to COVID. As part of that recovery planning, the executive team made a decision to bring forward part of the agenda for our DVLA's digital agenda to support our customers. So the vehicles transactions that we had in the pipeline to transform in the near future was brought forward. So that made us, that we were able then to facilitate online service to afford customers who were the key workers, critical workers, our stakeholders, to make sure that they were able to carry about their day-to-day business, and making sure that we were facilitating them with the tools with which to transact with the DVLA and other organisations. So the first service that we started looking at was the change of address on your V5 service. So as you can see, we have approximately, we have 1.4 million transactions where people are trying to change their the details on their record, and 20% of those is when they try to change their address. So by us putting this service online, we were able to facilitate immediate response to customers wanting to do the change of address process, which meant that they were able to carry out their day-to-day activities, and also then gave them an up-to-date application with which to transact, either with the agency for any of our other online services, or with some of the stakeholders, like applying for parking permits for key workers, etc. So we were able to reduce the processing times from 4 to 6 weeks to 3 to 5 days, which include postage time, to get the V5Cs back to the customers. To date, since we went live on the 15th of June, we have had nearly 930,000 applications, and we know that we're on target to achieve over 1 million transactions by sometime later this month. We have unbelievably already achieved a 60% take up since June, and bearing in mind that the development cost was 121,000, with a return over a 7-year project life cycle of nearly close to 16 million, the benefits for us are, and the customers are significant, the taxpayers are significant. So this was the precursor to the other services that we delivered last year, but the success of this service, whilst we were remote working as non-support staff, was obviously a significant achievement for the DVLA.
So the next slide, what I wanted to run through was very quickly the delivery timeline to that we worked to. You can see that on the 4th of May was where the initiation took place. So I had a phone call asking to kick off this piece of work. Within the space of 2 days, we'd established a team across the organisation. So that was a makeup of our engineering community, as well as sort of business colleagues, policy of data sharing, colleagues and everyone else. Within a week, we'd managed to set up all of our environments to get development underway, and within the second week we'd had an initial prototype ready. So we used a fast prototyping approach, where we developed a prototype quickly on the basis of an understanding of some basic requirements, and we got that then out to market to get some user research kicked off quickly after that, so we could start iterating the service thereafter. Now, over the next 4 weeks was pretty much a continuous cycle of iterative development, user research, business readiness activities, change control, requirements refinement, and a constant feedback loop to build a service that worked for the user, which we actually launched. We implemented that on the 14th of June, and it was made live to the public on the 15th. I think within the first few days, we'd seen a number of thousand transactions come through before we even launched a communications campaign, which went live on the Wednesday after we launched. So that just shows there from initiation to implementation, we worked within a 6-week window, which was incredibly fast. So the next slide there talks around the shape of the team that we use. So the core team in the middle. What I'm trying to illustrate there is that it was a product team, but it was also a cross-product team. So we had the vehicles product team working together. That was a group of developers, testers, architects, business users, service designers, but we also worked with other product areas because we were actually using some common utilities as part of the build of the service, which I've tried to sort of illustrate there with the different colours. So we all work together as one core team. On the outside there, we've got some of our sort of change control and governance areas, escalation points, and everything that we worked with very closely as well, and also used as reporting channels. So how do we do it? So typically at DVLE, we use Agile as a first approach for software development. We almost use a hybrid here of Scrum and Kanban. So we stuck to a sort of Scrum framework where we were operating on weekly sprints, refining the backlog regularly, prioritizing accordingly, and developing. The Kanban came into it because we were reacting to feedback so quickly that we did have to take a fluid approach there to the work that we were taking into each sprint. We were also, one of the things that worked really well was the constant feedback. So we were showcasing the service regularly. It wasn't set in stone when we would showcase the service. We were showcasing it when it was needed to get that instant feedback, mainly from Julie in her area to make sure that it was meeting user needs. And then we were reacting and iterating after that to move things along quickly. So one of the things I wanted to call out with this is that one of the real successes of how this worked well was that we had such large volumes of people involved. It was very difficult to sort of facilitate a single sort of ceremony stand-up, as you might know it. So what we done is we focused one stand-up which was engineering-led. So that was mainly focused on the technical progress. There was another one there which happened just shortly after the engineering stand-up. We had more of a business-led stand-up where we had change control delivery managers, policy or data governance colleagues. That was the focus of that stand-up. Myself and Julie worked between the two so that we could pass messages both between technical and business, so everyone was kept up to speed all the way throughout. We had representation from a wide area across the organisation at both stand-ups, but the main focus was on keeping the stand-ups within their time slots so that they were focused and they were facilitated very well to get the most out of them. So now it's over to a little bit about the duplicate V5 service.
So applying for a duplicate V5 is when you've lost, if you've lost, stolen, your V5C has been lost, stolen or destroyed, and you obviously want another one. And there is an example where if you've been in an accident, you need to have, and you need to have the accident damage annotated on the V5C. So that was prior to us introducing the digital service. We have 230,000 paper applications and 280,000 phone applications per year. The phone applications via our contact centre, and that's just to issue an exact replica of your V5C. Again, putting this online facilitated customers being able to transact with the agency and with external stakeholders, and again reduce the receipt time from 4 to 6 weeks to 3 to 5 days, which is significant. If you're waiting for a document to be able to transact, then you can do that. And albeit that customers weren't buying and selling vehicles significantly last year, it was going on, and this facilitated that accurate exchange of data and updating new keepers onto the records. So since we went live on the 28th of September, we've had over 120,000 applications. That's brought us in nearly £3 million in revenue, because there is a fee attached to applying for a duplicate V5C. And again, the development costs were 166,000 compared with a life cycle benefit of 6.3 million. And since go live, we've reached 50% take up, which is significant in such a short space of time, because we didn't go live until the end of September, beginning of October. So I think that's significant. It's obviously supported by our comms campaign, which is to go online whenever possible, but it has impacted us in relation to a reduction in our backlogs, and has allowed us to plan and actually deliver our COVID recovery.
So the delivery timeline looks slightly different for duplicate V5C service. You can see we used exactly the same process. The idea was initiated on the 18th of June. Within a week, again, we had a team established, and just over, we had started development work. And then we continued then for around a 10-week cycle. Now, the duplicate V5C service was a lot more complex from a development point of view. There was more data fields that we needed to capture and validate. There was also more integration points as well. So as Julie mentioned there is a payment. So we had to integrate with our sort of common payment utility, but also from a third-party payment perspective, we had to integrate with them. We implemented on the 27th of September, live to the public on the 28th of September, and again we launched the comms campaign that same week. Now, one thing I wanted to call out was that it worked very well the first time around with the change of address service. So why change it? So we used pretty much exactly the same framework, the same team structure, and the same methods that we used to develop the change of address service. It worked well the first time, and it worked just as well the second time around. So that was a really good thing about working together. So some of the technologies used, we used the same technology stacks for both services. So both are hosted on DVLA Strategic Cloud Platform. It allows for continuous deployment, development and integration, so that it's seamless to the user. So even since we've gone live, there's zero downtime deployments, which is really good. We use tools like Instana for performance management and monitoring. We use PagerDuty from a support perspective to get alerted on issues quickly, so that we can essentially resolve them. Ruby on Rails, so we use Ruby as a programming language on a Rails framework. We've got the Spinnaker pipeline that we use for fast deployments. And there's just a few more there. Postgres database, RubyMine testing tools. Again, all of this was automated to allow fast delivery of this. Now this diagram may not make some sense, so I'll just talk it through. Now, one of the things I wanted to call out again was that the green bit in the middle was the new component. So this is one of our sort of component designs that were pulled together for one of the services. Now on the right hand side, we've got the two grey boxes are already some common utilities that we have in DVLA. So what we had to do is just integrate the new component with those existing components. On the left hand side, then we've got some of our sort of legacy systems that we use to validate the data that we use for both services. Again, it was just about reusing what was already there with the new component that we actually added. So by using already existing components, we were allowed to and able to develop things a lot quicker than we would by setting everything up from scratch. Okay, so we've talked enough about what the services are, how we develop them. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen and take you on a quick demo of the change your address on your V5 service. So I'm hoping you can now see my screen. So the service is hosted on gov.uk. So you actually find the service by going through gov.uk. Once you click on Start Now, then it takes you, this is the first screen that you will see on the change of address service. So it asks you for your registration number. Of course, I'm using dummy data here. And then it asks you for your latest V5C registration certificate document reference number. Now, this is a unique number that you'd only have if you were in receipt of the registration certificate to avoid any fraud. Now, what we do when we are entering these details is we are checking with DVLA's core system that everything matches before we allow you to ask for a change of address. This is the postcode of the originating keeper. So this is what will be on DVLA's record. And again, we use that to validate that the details are correct before proceeding. Oh, just turn again. So after it's made that check, it replays the data to you just to make sure that's the correct vehicle. So it's done the lookup on DVLA's core system and it said, yeah, the details match. Yeah, that's a Ford Focus, or if not, you can try again if any of the details you've entered are correct. So we'll continue. Now it asks you for your new address. So this is where it looks up DVLA's sort of common address in service. Now what I'm going to do purely for nostalgic reasons, I'll use the address where or the street where I grew up, I should say, not the address. Select the address, and if you wanted to, you could also, if you didn't know the number, it'll give you a drop-down list of the numbers, or similarly, if you wanted to put one number in, it'll come up with addresses with that number in, or if you know the exact address, then of course you can just use that in English and Welsh. We'll continue. Now again, the service integrates with our notification service, which allows you to get an email notification. So if you selected yes, you can use an email address. You'll get notified of the change of address straight to your email. The reasons of the demo, I'll select no. Continue, then it asks you then for one final check of the details, confirming the vehicle, confirming the new address, and a declaration there to say that I am the registered keeper and that the details I provided are correct. Confirm, continue. So then the application is being processed. So that then sends the details back to DVLA's core system, and it actually uses the reference number then on the transaction log on our source record for audit purposes. And that is the demo. So I will stop sharing and we'll go back to the slides. So some of the lessons learned, it was difficult to find things that didn't work so well, but a lot of what did work well I've captured here. One of the main benefits and successes was the collaboration. Collaboration, not just across the engineering community or the business community, it was across the whole organisation. So like I alluded to earlier, we had lots of colleagues involved from different areas of the business and rest of the DVLA, policy, data sharing. Everyone was involved up front, which helped to speed up the timescales. So everyone knew and everyone went along the same journey together. So there was no, replicating, telling people what was going on because everyone was involved. Knowledge sharing as well. So when we first developed the change of address service, some of the technology was new to the product area. What we did, we worked across other product areas that use the technology to essentially grow our capability across our community, which worked really well, and it allowed us then to build a second one entirely within the product area, which was a real success. Reusable modern technology and using common components cut waste. So like I mentioned earlier, rather than setting up everything from scratch, we were able to reuse a lot of what was already there and integrate with some of the common components that we already had. The cloud platform, again, so that allowed for continuous and regular development, integration and deployment. It is a strategic cloud platform, and it allowed us to essentially reuse what was there. Again, not setting up everything from scratch, to allow the efficient delivery. Fast prototyping, so I alluded to this approach earlier. That worked really well in both scenarios, where you were able to get a prototype out to market and out to users quickly to start getting that early feedback, so that we could build a service and iterate to something that worked for the user. And the DevOps model, so yeah, the same engineering team that developed the service now support the service. So essentially, we've got experts within our ITS department that understand the service inside out, which has worked really well.
So obviously the services that we have are the feedback that we have from customers are significant in that they are easy to use, particularly the vehicle change of address service. It's very easy to use, it's very intuitive, and we get really good feedback on both services. We do undertake continuous improvement, and we've been undertaking user testing since we went live on both services, partly to make sure that we are providing the best service that we can for the customer, and partly because we want to make sure that we're meeting the GDS standards for putting these services on Gov.uk. We respond to the feedback by creating user stories for changes. One of the major feedback themes that we have is that we want to extend the service so that it's the request from the customers is that it's 24/7, but we do have the changes in train at the moment to deliver the service to 9 o'clock, and we're working on that at the moment. I think that at least over 50% of customers want it just for those hours, because when they're leaving the feedback, it's within those time frames. But obviously we want to further extend it so that it is 24/7. The further iterations that we have, we want to be able to integrate it with other services, and particularly for the duplicate online service, we want to be able to allow the customer the complete end-to-end journey, which for this in that instance would require them to tax at the end of the service. So we are looking to see how we can integrate the service with our licensing transaction service, EVL, to make sure that the customers can apply for a duplicate and tax their vehicles at the same time. We are proposing that we also increase the amount of V62 transactions, so applying for a V5C transaction. It's about looking to see what we can do to facilitate that. And again, this will, if we allow other services, V62 services, to be present online, it will reduce paper, facilitates our online portfolio of services, increases customer satisfaction, and we can again reuse technology, which Kerry talked about earlier. We already know that these services work, the technology works, and it's just about extending those for other functionality. Being able to add more transactions as part of the same service obviously means that we could be more proactive in ensuring that our services are fit for purpose and allow us to mitigate against any further COVID impacts on resources, to make sure that our customers can transact with the agency as and when they need to.
Thanks for listening. I think we're opening the floor now to any questions.
Okay, now then, Kerry and Julie, we have had some questions come in during the event. So if I make a start, we've had a really good engagement question through from Natasha, who's asking, how did you keep the team motivated and on track at such an uncertain time?
I don't mind taking that one. So we were working remotely, so we were all using Teams. Lots of people involved, like I mentioned earlier, but I think the motivation was there throughout. We all had a common goal, and everyone had a part to play to make it a success. That in itself kept everyone motivated. It was challenging. People worked hard, but everyone sort of working together helped maintain that.
Great, thanks, Kerry. Question from Tim: did you incorporate a Welsh version of the service?
We did indeed. We incorporated the Welsh version from day one. We whilst we were undertaking the delivery of the different screens, as and when we created a screen, we actually had a Welsh translation for it. That went into our user stories to make sure that we delivered the Welsh translations from day one. And again, going back to what Kerry said in relation to everybody working together, the Welsh language team worked very closely with us throughout.
Great, thank you. Everyone else, there's still a bit of time if you'd like to keep your questions coming in. Next question is from Tom Wilson. Amazing results and in such a small window, congrats. As the pandemic has accelerated your digital agenda, has this made a lasting change to your approach to digitising new services? I'd like to take that one.
Good question. I think DVLA is already on track with their digital transformation. Now, the delivery of these two services wasn't until I think phase 4 of that. So we're talking probably a couple of years down the line. We brought that forward because of the situation we were in. Now, in terms of changing the mindset, changing the way that we work, I think what I've tried to share with the wider community is what worked really well was using that product model, and the transformation program, they are using that same way of working.
Thanks, Kerry. Jade Williams has commented, those benefits are amazing. What type of benefits do you take into account?
I think it's the cost model that we create is what it costs us from a technology point of view, but we also take into account from the benefits is what savings it has to us as an agency receiving paper, for example, our sustainability targets and the achievement of those. And from an external point of view, it's how easy it is we make it for the customer. So in these particular instances, the creation of paper going to a post office, especially during a pandemic, is making sure that they don't do unnecessary journeys and factor in all of that costs in relation to that. Postage, etc., obviously comes into it. And again, the overarching benefit is that the fact that the customer can is able to transact with the agency because they have the necessary documentation with which to do so.
Great, thanks, Julie. Question through from Tom Wilson. How have you found making changes to gov.uk pages, specifically accessibility and speed of change?
So we work with GDS very closely. So GDS actually manage the changes on the landing page. In terms of accessibility, so we have teams in DVLA who sort of guide us with this, but we also have third parties that test our services, and we use the recommendations from them test to make tweaks to the services that we publish. So I think, talking about continuous improvement for both change of address and the duplicate V5 service, we've made changes from an accessibility point of view since we've gone live, and they seem to be working well. I think last week was the latest that we actually done a deployment for both of those.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. And another couple of questions have come through. So this is a question from Jonathan of Made Tech. With the development of the change of address service, is there scope or plans to discuss or discussions to use this to populate other government services, so the user or citizen only needs to change address once?
No plans afoot from a wider government point of view, as far as I'm aware, but that's a good idea.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Kerry. And a question through from Daniel. It's a nice one to finish on, actually. What were the biggest highlights for you both?
Going live successfully without any dramas is usually a good thing. I think both times. So one of the difficulties we have in DVLA, because our source record is a legacy-based system, for every deployment where we do integrate back into there, it's a good effort by the team, and it's quite hard work to facilitate that. Now on both accounts, we did have 2 successful implementations, and I think seeing the traffic come through first thing the following morning was a success for everyone. And throughout the day, of course, because we had lots of Teams chats open, seeing the volumes ramp up without actually launching a communications campaign was certainly very rewarding for everyone. There was a good vibe the day after going live.
I think from my perspective, it's making a difference during a really difficult time, and most significantly, it's working with your colleagues to achieve that difference as a whole. It's working with them, even though we were all remote. It's working with them in such a short space of time, from an aggressive point of view, to make sure that we have achieved what we set out to achieve. We have made a difference, and we have improved our customers' experience, and that during that time when we were all facing personal issues in relation to the pandemic, and to actually continue to strive to make this achievement. To me, that's significant. I've worked at the DVLA for a very long time, and this particular, these 2 particular exercises, these deliveries, were stand out for me from my career at the DVLA.
Thank you, Julie. I think that's all the questions that we've had in for today. So thank you everyone for joining us for the session, and a huge thank you to both our speakers, Julie and Kerry. I think it's time to say farewell. So take care, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.